Okay, let's begin. So, every job that we do, any interaction that we have, we need basic tools to begin, like basic social tools or basic, like actual tools like hammers, wrenches to build a house, right? We need the correct supplies in order to accomplish the desired outcome, right? And that's the same with training our dogs. So, some basic tools that we have to begin with, like when we start, school, we'll, usually need a pencil or a paper, at least like in kindergarten, to learn certain things. So it's like these are the pencil and paper to school and the wrench and the hammer to building a house. We have to have those tools in order to be successful on this journey. So the basic tools for training is we need uh, a well-fitting flat collar. Flat collar. This is just a regular collar. It needs to be well fitted, so one and a half fingers underneath it, like kind of like a kid in the seatbelt in the car seat. It needs to be that tight. It has to be up around the neck, near the jawline, and the ears. That's how you can measure. It should be a little bit loose up there, and it'll kind of slide down a little bit, and then we adjust it if it gets a little too loose. And then we also need a 6-foot leash with um, a strong clip um, that will not break during sessions. So we need to have um, a good conditioned leash with a good strong clip, and we need to have the basic flat collar on our dogs. Any other tool that we might use on our dogs, including like a harness or um, any other more aversive tools that some dogs do require in order to learn certain things, as like the prong collar or the gentle leader. Um, those things are kind of determined as we go to figure out what the dog needs and what the dog does not need as a minimally aversive tool. But these are the absolutes. You have to always have a well-fitted collar and a 6-foot leash. I see a lot of people don't have a well-fitted collar or a collar at all, and you just simply cannot train your dog efficiently without one. That is one of your basic tools that we will need to set up everything until we are able to move into more advanced work. Um, so the humane hierarchy, the least invasive, minimally aversive approach is kind of described as, like I said, the building blocks, kind of like a highway and um, or a road. So it can be like this. And we get off on each of these exits, each of these levels. The first one is wellness and nutrition, making sure that the dog I'm just going to scribble this, wellness and nutrition and physically, um, physical activity, that kind, and wellness and such. The antecedent arrangements are what is going on before the behavior. So we want to make sure that we are basically managing the environment in a way that's going to set our dog up for success and not failure, like determining um, environment, triggers, different things like that to determine kind of like what we're going to be working with. Positive reinforcement is going to be our next look at. We're going to use lots of positive reinforcement for the dog to learn expectations, to learn the behaviors that we want. And then differential reinforcement of alternative behaviors. Oh, that's a big one. Of alternative behaviors. So what we'll do is that is where, say my dog is barking or jumping when somebody comes to the door. Instead, I'm gonna, teach the dog that the different behavior that is required when that trigger happens is to sit, and they get rewarded with a treat or a bone to chew on, whatever's important to them, so long as they are practicing the behavior of sit, and only sit. It depends on what target behavior we're wanting to deal with, but it's basically teaching a behavior that is more humanly acceptable in place of a less humanly acceptable behavior like jumping or barking. Extinction, negative reinforcement, and negative punishment. That is, in simple terms, where we don't do anything about the unwanted behavior. We don't, we ignore it. And with the positive reinforcement for the desired behavior, it will decrease, and eventually extinction will happen where it just no longer happens because the dog's brain is conditioned to an alternative behavior that produces positive reinforcement in the beginning, and then it's kind of like an automatic thing that they do the more that they practice it. The last stop on this hierarchy is positive punishment, which would be more aversive, more like the dog knows the expectation. We've walked through all of the things leading up on this hierarchy. I'm just going to kind of show you the picture here. And then that would be, like a physical correction, or a no, or a hey, in order for, so we actually are applying a more aversive tool, or like, not that the prong collar is necessarily, it shouldn't be labeled as a bad thing, because sometimes it gets to a place where the pressure needs to be faster and quicker, and used correctly, it can be a really good tool. In fact, you can put it on your own neck. You can feel how it would be a good tool to use for dogs just struggling with being able to listen and obey what they've already known and been taught up through the hierarchy, where their needs have been met, where the obedience has, where they understand those things, where you've worked on impulse control and focus, and so adding those things in later is sometimes necessary for some dogs. And it's not a forever thing. Typically, it's just for them to be able to move into the next phase of their development, so they can actively practice what they're supposed to be doing, along with positive reinforcement and all the other things that we use on this hierarchy. We don't move into that positive punishment without also continuing to do all of these building blocks as well. And too many times we find ourselves saying, no, don't do this, no, don't do that, but we're not actually using all the building blocks for our dogs to understand. So dog language and human language, it's going to be different. Dog language is more, their psychology is still complex, but their thinking is black and white. The psychology of a dog is complex, but their language and their thinking processes are more black and white. So they think in a form of like, there's a beginning to a behavior and an end to a behavior. And if we are not beginning a behavior and ending the behaviors that we want, and guiding them, then they will choose which behaviors they're beginning and which behaviors they're ending. Some dogs are more triggered, impulsive with anxiety or fear genetic makeup, and sometimes them choosing just naturally for themselves, actually it becomes dangerous to them. It can become dangerous to others around them because they haven't had that guided leadership to understand how to function in a world around them, just, similar to people with mental health and different things like that, and they're not bad dogs, but sometimes we don't know how to help them. So figuring that out, and sometimes it's kind of a puzzle. It's kind of, it takes a bit of time, especially for a new trainer. Um, you know, um, I would say, I don't know. Anyway, so dog language, more black and white. Obviously, the English language, um, different languages have different rules and different pieces that are very kind of complex to learn. And we, as humans, don't understand a lot of times that dogs have their own language. It is complex to learn, but we can learn that language, hence to bridge the gap so they can comprehend our communications more clearly. It's not that they can't understand, that they have no idea what's going on around them. They do to a certain degree, but again, they speak a different language. So like when we're hanging out with somebody who's speaking a different language, we can pick up on stuff. We can do body signals, we can point, we can, draw, we can do different things. We can even use a phone for interpretation, which is, obviously can't do that with a dog, not yet. So, but the point is, until we learn the language and actively practice it and know kind of the rules for it, we're not going to be successful in fluently speaking that language. And with dogs, it's the same way, except for some dogs are a little bit more chill than others, just like people, different personalities, different genetic makeups. So learning how to work with the different dogs and using their language and bridging that gap is super important. So we're going to learn some basic skills in order to do that. We're going to practice what dog body language looks like with my demonstration dogs. And let me see, did I cover everything? Oh, we need, along with the 6-foot leash and well-fitting flat collar, we do need small treats and a pouch. That is how we begin. In dog language, this is how they get paid. That's how they're rewarded. That's how we move them into the behaviors that we want them to do. So some kind of reward. So it could be treats, it could be a toy. You'll see me practicing that with Hemi. You'll see what I mean by that. Some kind of reward that's not where it's desired enough, but it's not, where they can still be at a certain level of learning, which is why typically I'll feed the dogs breakfast and supper, and then during the middle of the day, throughout the day, you can use their kibble mixed in with some treats to make the kibble even taste better. I mean, because then they have a desire to work for a reward, and throughout, all of history, even for people, we work to obtain reward. Of course, in this situation, it's not a life-sustaining thing. It's just a motivation tool. That's all it is. It's kind of just a motivation tool, a reward, going to work, clocking in. It can be a rewarding job. Even if it's not a rewarding job, you're still getting paid, right? Same with dogs. So anyway, we'll move on to some of the basics.